that, I would like to start the webinar by passing the word to Mr. Patrick Devils, Director of the OCF Secretariat, for welcome and introductions. Thank you all very much for your presence. Patrick, over to you.
Thank you very much, Alexander, and welcome also from me to everybody on the call. We're really happy to see that so many people are connecting today. My name is Patrick Devils. I'm the Director of the Secretariat of the wider Caribbean Ocean Coordination Mechanism. As many among you may know, the wider Caribbean Ocean Coordination Mechanism came into being last year as a consequence of a long-standing issue that we try to address, which is that actually within the wider Caribbean, we are many countries, we are many organizations, we are many entities working on a better marine environment in support of our livelihoods and the blue economies. And we did feel that there was a need for enhanced coordination and collaboration so that actually the investments we make by actually being more united in action, we can achieve more. It is as such actually that we have titled this series of webinars, Wider Caribbean and Beyond, United in Action Towards a Sustainable Ocean. The idea of the series of webinars is to seek to collectively raise our ambitions towards a more sustainable ocean. We are doing this on the road to the upcoming Our Ocean Conference in Kenya in June this year, but we also look beyond. We had quite a few initiatives kicking off in the region, starting with the United Nations Ocean Conference last year in Nice, continuing then with the climate change COP in Brazil. We've seen several countries committing to some of these ocean sustainability instruments. So we thought it would be good to have a series of webinars ahead of our ocean conference, but also on the road towards UNOC 4, the fourth United Nations Ocean Conference in 2028, to try and mobilize additional countries to make these pledges to actually adopt these ocean sustainability instruments. It is in that sense that we thought if we have this series of webinars throughout the month of March, we hope that other entities and countries may become inspired to also sign on to these very positive initiatives by hearing from the early leaders about how they have embraced these tools, these practices, these commitments, and how they're actually trying to implement them. I will not take too much time. I would just want to mention that today's webinar is about Actioning Blue, the 30 by 30 initiative. We will have additional webinars next week on sustainable ocean planning, the week after that on ocean accounts, and then the week after that on blue NDCs and potentially also on underwater noise. I would not walk ourselves through the agenda now. I think a copy of the agenda will be shared in the chat of the platform. I would limit myself to introduce Megan Cuddy, the Director of Our Ocean Conference Secretariat at WRI, for some opening remarks. We were also supposed to have some opening remarks from the Honorable Karen James, Minister of Environment, Climate Resilience and Renewable Energy of the Government of Grenada. Grenada has indeed exercised a leadership role on the Ocean Coordination Mechanism. I'm sure that we will hear about that from Ambassador Sophia Swanee as well, who's also a participant in this webinar. But unfortunately, the minister herself had an urgent commitment popping up at the last minute, so she can't make it for the webinar. But we do look forward to hearing from Ambassador Swanee. And now, first of all, the opening remarks from Megan Cuddy from the WRI, Our Ocean Conference Secretariat. And with that, Megan, I would hand the floor to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Megan. I represent the Our Ocean Conference Secretariat at the World Resources Institute. Happy to provide just a bit of scene-setting remarks for this great discussion. So for those who are not familiar, the Our Ocean Conference is a global platform that since 2014 has generated over 2,900 voluntary commitments and nearly $170 billion in pledged finance to address the challenges facing our ocean. It also has a very strong focus on accountability. Since 2014, about 80% of those commitments have been fully delivered or are in progress towards delivery. Those commitments take many forms: finance, locally led projects, education, and capacity building efforts, political commitments, really, you name it, it's a part of our ocean. And one of the reasons our ocean is particularly effective is because it mobilizes governments and civil society to implement ocean solutions that really suit their needs. Because every region, every country, every community has unique challenges, and it also has unique strengths. But at the same time, our ocean brings together coalitions of like-minded governments and partners that are ultimately seeking the same outcomes, whether that is addressing the impacts of climate change or tackling IUU fishing or making progress towards achieving 30 by 30 targets. And that is one of the reasons we're so excited by the leadership that is being shown in the Caribbean region through individual government action, as well as initiatives like the Ocean Coordination Mechanism and the Actioning Blue Declaration. In the same way, these initiatives build upon the individual strengths and ambitions of Caribbean states while at the same time bringing governments together to support alignment in their work towards common goals. And Caribbean islands and coastal countries are truly champions of the ocean, mostly by necessity. The ocean is linked to culture, to economy, to security, to resilience, and threats to the ocean threaten all of those facets of life in the Caribbean. And so the region has really become a test bed for innovative ocean financing and conservation strategies. And as we look towards Mombasa in June and hope to see many of you there, we are really looking forward to some opportunities for the Caribbean to showcase this leadership, showcase the innovative solutions that are coming out of the region, and showcase some of the lessons that have been learned along the way and the challenges that still remain to be overcome to the wider global community that will be present. We also look forward to a very strong signal of continued ambition from Caribbean governments, both through new commitments being announced and through the delivery of existing commitments. Because when it really comes to ocean action, the whole is really more than the sum of its part. When we see regions coming together to coordinate their action, to manage transboundary resources, to align strategies and share knowledge, we really do see better outcomes being achieved. Taking that regional approach to ocean management is really a clear way to move the needle, and it's really heartening to see Caribbean governments doing just that. As we are heading into the second half of this very important decade, it is critical now more than ever that governments really ramp up their ambition. And with 4 years remaining to meet that 30 by 30 goal, the clock is ticking. Now is really the time to step forward, not step backwards. We've seen really, really wonderful progress in the past 2 years. 2025 and 2026 have been banner years for ocean action, with entry into force of BBNJ and the fish subsidies agreements, with hundreds of new commitments being announced at both the 10th Our Ocean Conference and the UN Ocean Conference, which we really look forward to hearing some progress updates on in Mombasa. But when I think about the work that we do through the Secretariat and through the Our Ocean Conference, it's not really about the conference. It's not even really about the single commitment announcements. It's about what those commitments and their implementation really collectively mean. Every conference is an opportunity to both celebrate our achievements that we're making as a global community, but also push for progress where we need it. It's a part of our global journey towards a more sustainable, healthier ocean for everyone. And every commitment that we deliver, whether that is a multi-billion-dollar finance package or a major political pledge or a coastal restoration project that's being led by a small community, is one step along the path towards really achieving the global goals that we have set for ourselves. The ocean is a global system. It requires global solutions, and achieving those outcomes really do take all of us. And so we're very much looking forward to bringing the Caribbean together alongside with other regions in Mombasa in just a few short months. And I'm very much looking forward to today's discussion and to learning more about all of the great work ahead. Thank you so much. And I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Megan, for those opening remarks. I also want to share my deepest regrets on behalf of Minister James from the government of Grenada. She really wanted to be here, but unfortunately it was pulled away by another priority. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. It's really great to see so many people here on the webinar today, and congratulations to the OCM Secretariat for hosting this series of webinars and giving us the opportunity to kick it off by focusing on 30 by 30. So I know we don't have a lot of time and we have a very exciting panel coming up ahead. And we really want to ensure that there's good discussion and that there's an opportunity for the audience to participate through questions. But before we get to the panel, we do have two very exciting presentations. The first presentation will be made by the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund by its CEO, Karen McDonald-Gale, and she will speak to understanding the ocean financing gap and leveraging the Action in Blue Declaration to build regional and political momentum. And I really loved some of the great elements that Megan raised in her opening remarks that spoke to ramping up ambition, the need to be able to share knowledge, the need to be able to push regional coordination. I think there's so many great examples of that coming from the Caribbean region, and this webinar is a good platform for us to amplify some of those innovations and some of those practices. And I think beyond just ramping up ambition, we really want to show the audience that in the Caribbean, we've also worked on ramping up action, as well as turning some of the commitments that we have made at past our ocean conferences into impact on the ground. And so I'll hand it over to Karen McDonald-Gale from the CBF to kick us off with the first presentation. And I realized that I didn't introduce myself. My name is Sophia Sani, and I will be the moderator for the webinar today. I also serve in the position of Climate Ambassador for the Government of Grenada and also Special Advisor to Honorable Karine James. Karen, I'm handing it over to you.
Thank you, Ambassador Sani, and thank you so much for being here and moderating the session. It's great to have you, and indeed a pleasure to be on the panel with such a distinguished range of colleagues and friends who are working on this very important topic. So I will go straight into it. As Safia has said, well, we have limited time, and I am just here to give an overview. So very quickly, just in case there are those on the call who haven't heard about the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, we are a regional conservation trust fund. There's much more on our website about the work we do, but our focus is on identifying sustainable financing mechanisms that will work throughout the Caribbean region. And the map that you see there are some of the countries we already have programs and projects with, and we look to expand that throughout the Caribbean region. We feel our role is a lot about coordinating and really bolstering some of what was said already for the ocean coordination mechanism. What can we do among the islands that we are working in to ensure this coordination? Our beginnings are in the roots of the Caribbean Challenge Initiative, for those who remember that process. We were established in 2012, and we have brought together governments, private sector partners, and civil society organizations for this regional partnership. We really are trying our best to figure out how we have Caribbean players together working on aspects of conservation finance, particularly for the work that's happening under the 30 by 30. We've worked with Blue Nature Alliance on the effective MPA activities for the Caribbean project, or the MPAC project. And I want to acknowledge Fabian Kine, who's been leading this process for us. And indeed, you have seen him on the call already today. And we've been honored to have him on our team. The MPAC project is winding to a close, but we did have some major accomplishments. One is an MPA gap analysis for the Caribbean region. And it had a number of key findings, really starting to ask the question of what is this financing gap that we need to fill? In addition to the work that's happening now, what more is needing? As you will see in the slide, the annual financing need, we did target 8 focus nations, and the annual financing need is estimated at $642 million US. And the current financing levels, given the current financing levels, we have a gap of $576 million US for the region to deal specifically on reaching that 30 by 30 target that we are all speaking so much about. So that's very important for us to understand, and now helps us with the setting of the target that we need for moving forward. So as part of that process and through the MPAC project and beyond, the idea is twofold. One is to bring together the Caribbean leaders, the partners and governments of the region that have been, that will need to be key to declaring and managing effectively protected areas. And we have here the signatories that we already have to the Action in Blue vision and roadmap for our Caribbean Ocean. And we are at 14 signatures now, and our aim, of course, is to build on that as we go forward. It is an important part of the work that we're doing for the way forward. And we are hoping to work a lot through conservation trust funds. The CBF in its designs works through national level conservation trust funds in addition to CBF as a regional trust fund. And the idea being that as much as we're working at the regional level, there is also work going on at the national level. And we have a breakout of the types of programs that we're doing. We have conservation finance, climate change, and nature-based economies programs. And they are indeed having a focus on MPAs and the wider marine management discussions, such as disaster relief and reef risk insurance. The work that we are looking to that you will be hearing a lot more as we go forward, and the last part of the impact project is the idea of the Marine Protected Area Finance Facility, or a sustainable finance mechanism that specifically focus on marine protected areas finance. And we are working on that now, and there'll be a lot more that will come out at the OOC and other fora to continue discussions on how we advance this facility to help close the financing gap and provide a durable long-term mechanism for the Caribbean moving forward. I know I'm at time, so I leave you with that. Thank you so much, and I look forward to any comments or questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen. That was fantastic. There's so much information that I know that everyone would want to know more on. I know that Fabian has just shared the link to the CBF in the chat window, but as Karen has said, you're free to place your questions and inquiries in the chat, and we'll do our best to address them. If we don't address them at this webinar, I'm sure there's an opportunity to connect with Karen and the team to continue that conversation. So we're moving right along. We're leaving Caribbean Biodiversity Fund and we're heading over to the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. We're really excited to have Dr. Helena Jeffrey Brown from the OECS, who's been doing quite a lot of amazing work on the OECS Biodiversity Program. And she's here today to talk about the recently launched program, the OECS 30 by 30 Transformation Program. It's a quite exciting program and something that is very close to my heart. And really excited that Helena is here to share the benefits of the program with you and some of the progress that we have made. So Helena, I'm handing it over to you.
Hello, good day. It's so good to see you today. It's so good to see everyone here. My name is Helena Jeffrey Brown from the OECS Commission. I am the Program Director for the Biodiversity Unit within the Environmental Sustainable Division, also the Program Manager for the OECS 30 by 30 Transformation Program. I'm not sure if you can see my slides as yet, hopefully. Also, just to say that Ambassador Sony is also the Strategic Advisor for this transformation program. So great to be here. I am going to turn off my camera because I have to look at a different screen and you don't want to see the side of my face, so bear with me. Okay, so here we are. So here is this program. I don't know if anybody's heard about it. I hope you have. So just a quick recap of what we are and what we do. The main objective of this program is to assist our OECS member states in meeting the targets under the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And we are doing this through the Council of Ministers for Environmental Sustainability. We meet with our ministers at least quarterly to work through this process for their guidance, for their support, for their help and assistance in decision making. So just know that this project is homegrown. It's coming from all 12 of our member states. Our 12 member states are actively engaged, political level and the technical level. And we work directly with them in creating the work around this transformational program that is intended to have transformational, impactful change on the ground in meeting the Global Biodiversity Framework targets. So as you can see in the slide before you on the left, And this is supported by the Spaces Consortium, and you can see who it consists of: Companion Nature, McKinsey, Systemic, UNEP, WCNC, and others. And then, as again, the objective is repeated. So I'm moving along swiftly because I have limited time as well. But this is important to note that yes, we know the Global Biodiversity Framework has 23 targets. So we are concentrating on the first four core targets, which look at halting biodiversity loss in high biodiverse areas, which are very common in small island developing states, restoring degraded ecosystems, conserving terrestrial freshwater and marine areas, and halting extinction. But of course, we also have to take in Target 14, which speaks to integration of biodiversity into our policies, regulations, our planning, our way of doing things. That's key. And then finally, Target 19, which is looking at substantially and progressively. We're looking at resources, financial resources from all sources, every which way, because biodiversity is significant, is usually the core sister for our rich climate change older sister, but no, that's not how it is anymore. Biodiversity underpins all life, and we have to, for us to be transformative, we have to have sustainable financing. Now, the lower part of this slide speaks to the fact that yes, we have to achieve these targets, but how are we doing it? We have 18 indicators, that we're using to help monitor how we progress. And the data that we use is taken from our member states. It is the data that's taken from the ground that help us in our decision-making process. It helps move us forward. Moving to the next slide, you'll see in front of you 9 initiatives. Now, our data analytical team, after gathering the data and doing all the analysis, we determined that by looking at for these 9 initiatives, if we could achieve this, then we could have significant impactful change in terms of reversing biodiversity loss in the OECS region. And that is significant. And we had to put a costing of that here. But I just want to introduce to you these 9 initiatives initially. You can see them categorized into 4 areas. The first one is looking at habitat protection and restoration, in which there are 3 initiatives. I want to highlight the very first one because of the subject of this whole webinar is marine and coastal conservation. And as you can note, that it is the most expensive of our initiatives. But within that habitat protection, we're looking also at protected area management and integrated land use planning. The second category is funding and financial mechanisms, where we consider the use of the green bond and looking at our financing roadmap. Under the economic development category, we're considering sargassum, making sure that we are working with all the sargassum programs within the area. And we're working on sustainable agriculture and tourism. And then finally, the enabling initiative, the regional conservation hub. And through weeks of working with all our member state champions, through our strategic partners that are at the table with us, working diligently, we're able to create the KPIs, milestones, and deliverables and costings for 7 of the 9. The agriculture and the tourism initiative will be worked on this year. And we're anticipating the same energy and enthusiasm around those 2. So we really appreciate all the member states and the strategic partners for getting all of us to this point. So the next slide I'm going to concentrate on that last initiative, that regional conservation hub. It looks simple. Well, what is it about? It is the enabler. It is the engine behind this process. If we have a regional conservation hub, it means having a conduit that sits within the OECS. And idea with it will be a conduit to which we streamline all the work that's being done around biodiversity. Because as you know, there are many, many partners that work on biodiversity. It's not only member states doing their own thing. We have different strategic partners coming with different strengths. So the idea here, have one hub where all the work is funneled through, where we can streamline the work, where we can have these 3 pillars, where we look at sustainable financing, securing diversity, sustainable financing streams, bringing it all together under one area. Looking at regional coordination and collaboration, aligning all the work of our strategic partners, aligning all the work that's being done in the region, so we don't have duplication of efforts. We recognize the gaps and find ways to fill them so that there's no, there's no overlapping, there's no redundancy. We're making sure that we are streamlining to make sure whatever we do is impactful and scalable. And then finally, stakeholder engagement and advocacy, the third pillar of this hub, is key because it fosters collaboration. Our approach is whole of society. Everybody is involved in this process. So moving on to the next slide. I just wanted to speak to you briefly about this slide on sustainable financing roadmap. This is one of our one of our initiatives to help us create a sustainable financing mechanism so that we as biodiversity, workers are able to have sustainable financing doing the work that we have to do in reversing biodiversity loss. And we've been fortunate in that 5 of our member states were able to apply to Global Biodiversity Framework Fund, and we were successful in unlocking funding to help us move this big program forward. This big program that will create great, significant, impactful change on the ground in terms of reversing biodiversity loss. And what that meant is that means we're successful. We probably got in the news November of last year, and so we're in the project preparation phase right now. But the idea behind this funding, it'll have significant impact on how we do our work. It will first help us operationalize that regional conservation hub. Remember I spoke about that? That was a conduit where we would funnel everything through. We'll streamline the work of all our partners, that we're making sure all the partners are working together in tandem. We were not duplicating efforts. We're making sure the funds are being streamlined, that we're making sure we're collaborating, working together as a unit to push forward this process. Because there's limited funding, there are limited resources, we all have different strengths, so let's use them together to move this forward as opposed to redoing each other's efforts. So that's a big deal for us. And the main other area that the funding will go to is to help start the funding behind the marine and coastal conservation initiative. So that helps us to build out that platform. The slide in front of you, the blue part is the projects activities financed by the Global Biodiversity Fund, and the part on the left is looking at long-term targets. And I just wanted to show you this slide because it nicely encapsulates how the GBFF will help funding from there will help us catapult us into the future. So I hope that this has been useful, and I'll put the website in the chat, and feel free to ask any questions that you may wish. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Helena, so much. I know it's a big challenge to stick to a short amount of time when there's so much information to share, and especially so much exciting progress. But congratulations to the OECS and all the work that has gone into this program, and of course, for getting that GBFF approval last November for the Caribbean region. We've had these 2 great presentations that looked at the opportunities of regional coordination and regional cooperation. First, we've heard from Karen speaking to the financing gap that still exists in implementation to get countries to peak management of effectiveness of their MPAs, so that we move from paper parks to functional protected spaces that we can all benefit from. We've heard from Karen the role of CBF in really driving that political commitment that underpins a lot of the work that we do, that allows us to connect government priorities with priorities on the ground, and that really gets us to unlock not just financing, but technical assistance and resources that we need to address some of the issues that we're continuing to deal with when it comes to ocean governance and ocean management. And of course, from the OECS, we see a very innovative approach looking at aggregating regional needs and gaps around the opportunity to open up opportunities at the largest scale. So now that we've heard these great examples at the regional level, I really want to now transition over to our panel, where we will hear from representatives from different countries, offering their perspectives along the spectra of many of the elements that go into ensuring that we have successful ocean governance within the wider Caribbean region. So I'd like to thank both Karen and Helena for your presentations. Again, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. And if you can post a website and any of the contact information, please do so. And anyone that's interested in learning more, please feel free to reach out to Helena and Karen. They're both great organizations and wonderful, wonderful leaders and champions for this. So now we're transitioning over to our country champion panel, where we have representatives from 4 different countries. We have representatives from the Dominican Republic, from Belize, from Colombia, and from Panama. And I'm very excited to have these champions as part of this very exciting conversation around different strategies that support ocean governance, that support ocean management, and looking at different perspectives that go into ensuring that we're able to successfully meet our national and regional targets. I'd like to kick off the panel by inviting Mr. Jonathan Delance, who is the Chief Transformation Officer within the government of the Dominican Republic, to kick off this discussion around strengthening governance to attract private and non-traditional financing. Jonathan, the DR has invested quite a bit of effort in the last couple of years in advancing progress on 30 by 30 through governance and institutional strengthening, including working with a variety of partners to explore and implement sustainable financing tools that consider both private sector leverage as well as economic development. So for those that are not familiar with this work, can you first share a bit of that vision and then also speak to some of the challenges that you have experienced in this transformation effort, given that the goal of this webinar is to really look at lessons and share the lessons with a number of folks in the Caribbean that are supporting these kinds of experiences. We think it's really beneficial for us to not just hear all the good things that have happened, but of some of the challenges and difficulties that you faced along the way, and some of the strategies that you've used to help mitigate those. So Jonathan, I'm going to hand over to you, and I do believe that you will be speaking in Spanish. For those of you who are joining us now, we do have translation available. And if you go into your Zoom setting and you choose the interpretation, you should be able to understand the discussion. So Jonathan, handing it over to you.
Hola, ¿me escuchan? Do you hear me?
Yes.
Gracias, Afilla. Supongo ya está corriendo la traducción. No sé si debo esperar un segundo más o puedo empezar. Perfecto. Bueno, primero que nada, muy buenas tardes a todos. Gracias por su tiempo, por estar acá. Gracias, Afilla, por la introducción. Muchísimas gracias a todos los organizadores. Y nada, para entrar en el tema, aprovechando el poco tiempo que tenemos para exponer algunas de las experiencias en República Dominicana, yo voy a hablar un poco desde la perspectiva de los cambios que se han hecho recientemente en cuanto a la visión y aproximación al tema del 30 por 30 y cómo República Dominicana está trabajando para generar algunas condiciones habilitantes que permitan pues la participación de un financiamiento adicional para la conservación, incluyendo el financiamiento privado. ¿Qué pasa? Que para dar un poco de contexto, al igual que muchos otros países en la región, en Dominicana hay una alta dependencia del capital natural, especialmente para turismo, para pesca y para costas. Sabemos también que tenemos una alta vulnerabilidad a temas climáticos, con huracanes, con temas de erosión costeras. Tenemos también una diversidad de ecosistemas muy importante desde la montaña hasta el mar. Nosotros tenemos el pico más alto de las Antillas y también tenemos o compartimos con Puerto Rico parte de las aguas más profundas del Caribe, de casi 8,000 metros de profundidad. Entre esa combinación, nosotros tenemos un sistema nacional de áreas protegidas muy diverso, pero también con una visión desde hace muchos años, vamos a decir, muy restrictiva en el uso. Y creo que nosotros estamos pasando a dar una mirada de aprovechamiento sostenible donde pueda darse ese aprovechamiento sostenible de esos ecosistemas. Y eso obviamente representa una reinterpretación de la visión de conservación a un tema de paisajes productivos que puedan combinar la conservación con algunos elementos de financiamiento para la conservación. Entonces, ¿en qué puedo decir que hemos estado trabajando? Para alcanzar el 30 por 30 o el 30% de protección, la primera pregunta que todos nos hacemos es ¿cómo vamos a financiar estas nuevas áreas marinas protegidas? Porque definitivamente no queremos parques de papel, queremos parques que estén bien gestionados. Y tenemos un reto enorme porque sobre todo en la parte marina es más costosa normalmente la gestión, al menos en las áreas que son costeras, porque en las áreas que son más amplias sí sabemos que en términos, vamos a decir, en promedio el costo es menor por hectárea, porque las áreas que son remotas tienen otra condición de manejo diferente a las áreas costeras que tienen mayores interacciones con otras actividades económicas. Pero bueno, pensando en eso, nosotros decidimos que, por ejemplo, las OMEX o otras medidas efectivas de conservación, OECMs, deben de tener una aproximación al involucramiento de las comunidades y de sectores productivos en la conservación. Hay un ejemplo muy particular, no me voy a detener en todos los ejemplos que tiene República Dominicana, pero nosotros en el año pasado declaramos una área como OMEC o en base a OMEC marina. Y esa área en particular se hizo con el consenso de un mecanismo de gobernanza local que incluía los ayuntamientos, autoridades locales y sector privado. El sector privado principalmente porque aprovecha los recursos costeros como atractivo turístico. Entonces, esa área tiene una particular importancia para la reproducción de alevines, de corales y otras especies importantes para la zona del este. Y en vez de nosotros restringir el uso de esa área, lo que hicimos fue dedicar algunos espacios de esa área para hacer snorkel y otras actividades náuticas con estándares específicos de conservación, y parte del financiamiento que se utiliza en ese turismo se utiliza propiamente para la conservación. Eso es uno de los ejemplos que tenemos desde la parte privada, no necesariamente como un área protegida pública, que deriva beneficio de financiamiento para la conservación, como uno de los ejemplos que tenemos. Nosotros también entendemos que los planes de manejo de las áreas protegidas del Sistema Nacional de Áreas Protegidas deben de visualizarse bajo el contexto de cuáles actividades se pudiesen aprovechar económicamente, pero que rindan beneficios al objeto de conservación. Y en ese sentido, tratamos de ubicar cuáles son esas actividades y qué tipo de regulaciones se necesitan para esas actividades. Porque para el sector privado es muy importante tener garantía y seguridad legal de la actividad que implementa, cómo la puede implementar y bajo qué forma. Entonces nosotros estamos trabajando en una aproximación de mantener todas esas regulaciones lo más claro posible que permiten esas actividades. Nosotros tenemos una de las áreas protegidas nuestras de que recibe 1 de cada 4 turistas que vienen a la República Dominicana y permite el financiamiento del Sistema Nacional de Áreas Protegidas, cerca del 25% también lo genera. Y hay varios casos así. Tenemos acuerdos de comanejo en áreas más extensas, también marinas, que tienen distintas partes, y el sector turístico y de pesca participa, incluyendo financiamiento desde el sector turismo a la conservación de estas áreas, con la participación también de algunas ONG de conservación. Déjame darme rápido, que sé que me queda poco tiempo. La otra cosa que tenemos en mente, nosotros tenemos que estar claros que los mecanismos para que la generación de ingresos, quien tiene el derecho sobre esos ingresos, debe de estar delimitado en el marco legal. Y ese vacío nosotros estamos tratando de completarlo. Lo que sucede es que pueden ser varios instrumentos financieros que requieren de una diferente aproximación. Nosotros nos encontramos en ese proceso. Por ejemplo, lo que tiene que ver con carbono azul, ¿quién guarda los derechos de esos recursos que pueden provenir de eso? Y estamos en un trabajo intenso ahora mismo legal de definir ese tipo de cosas. Sin embargo, en otros asuntos, como pago por servicios ambientales, ya República Dominicana cuenta con una ley para pago por servicios ambientales que en principio se enfocó en ecosistemas terrestres, pero que está derivando ahora hacia ecosistemas costeros y marinos, principalmente con los corales. También tenemos que hablar de cómo desarrollamos desde el Estado un pipeline para inversiones en la conservación. Nosotros, como casi todos los países del Caribe, tenemos muchos proyectos dispersos, dependemos mayormente de donaciones o de cooperación, y muchos tenemos algunos instrumentos financieros identificados, pero falta madurarlos. Entonces, nosotros estamos priorizando aquellos instrumentos que tienen algún tipo de potencial y que en términos de esfuerzo e impacto sean lo más beneficioso posible en el corto plazo. En ese proceso, el Estado ha intentado trabajar con alianzas público-privadas, como el caso de los fideicomisos, que se creó el marco normativo para eso, y en los fideicomisos participa el sector privado, incluyendo aspectos, por ejemplo, como el manejo de los residuos sólidos, donde el sector privado participa, genera un beneficio, pero junto con el Estado ahí se salvaguarda una parte del tema de la contaminación, por ejemplo. Pero también se tiene para el desarrollo privado de infraestructura hotelera en determinados destinos turísticos, donde el paisaje se considera todo el capital natural y cómo se maneja ese paisaje natural sin que afecte la conservación de esos recursos. Ahora mismo, para el proyecto también, para el programa 30x30, estamos desarrollando unos procesos que nos permiten acceder a un fondo verde. Digo fondo verde porque textualmente así que se llama República Dominicana, pero que bien puede ser aplicado a fondo azul. Fondo Verde fue una iniciativa que se implementó el año pasado y logró el financiamiento de cerca de 700 millones del sector privado para inversión pública. Ahora bien, eso nos ha permitido a nosotros lograr desarrollar proyectos que con ese financiamiento privado se puedan invertir en proyectos de desarrollo en temas de conservación. Y en ese caso tenemos dos pilotos interesantes que están vinculados a las 23 metas del marco global de biodiversidad. No sé si tengo tiempo para hablar con especificidad de esos proyectos. En fin, yo creo que nosotros tenemos que ir trabajando en esos espacios y en la simplificación de los permisos para inversiones que puedan apuntar al desarrollo del 30x30. En principio, ustedes saben que la permisología para el tema ambiental o de desarrollos de negocios a veces es un poco largo o puede ser fragmentado y que toma tiempo. Y eso al inversionista en algunos casos le complica. Entonces, todo ese tema se está tratando de sistematizar y automatizar para hacer más fácil y transparente también ese proceso. En este momento se están trabajando todos los proyectos que lleguen, pero se quiere trabajar en los proyectos que puedan tener una vinculación al 30x30 para que sea mucho más fácil acceder a ese tipo de proyectos con lineamientos que estén estandarizados. Entonces, nada, en fin, para la República Dominicana, nosotros creemos que es importante y es una oportunidad estructural transformar la biodiversidad, pero como resiliencia económica, no que se vea como un costo ambiental y esas discusiones con el Ministerio de Hacienda creo que están rindiendo fruto en el entendimiento de que ese capital natural es que mantiene la infraestructura económica del país. Entonces, nos faltan muchísimas cosas, pero estamos muy concentrados ahora en planificar bien el territorio como tal, las áreas marinas protegidas, la planificación espacial marina, qué se puede hacer, qué no se puede hacer, cuáles son los ecosistemas más importantes y lo que brindan esos servicios y cómo podemos financiar que eso se mantenga en el tiempo. Desde una mirada o esa transformación de la visión de no solamente ser restrictivo, sino de tener un uso sostenible de esos recursos. Entonces yo creo que la clave está en definir bien cuáles son las reglas, cuáles son los ingresos que podemos tener, pero también ver los riesgos que pueden tener esos ingresos y que sea una forma transparente, una plataforma creíble también para el sector privado. Para en la región, nosotros entendemos que como región, nosotros tenemos que tener bien definido todo este tema de zonificación, que sean aptos para inversión, tener una cartera de proyectos que sean bancables con financiamiento combinado, que los derechos estén claramente definidos sobre los ingresos que se puedan obtener de cualquier actividad, que sea derivada de la conservación, porque siempre tener en mente que el objetivo siempre es la conservación. Y quizá los marcos regionales nos ayuden a tener una visión más grande que mercados pequeños y así puede fluir un capital privado hacia la gestión activa y no solamente a la protección de estos ecosistemas. Yo creo que con eso puedo concluir. Estoy abierto a cualquier pregunta y espero que la traducción haya sido bien. Traté de hablar despacio. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Yes, the translation went very well. And I see you've just disappeared from the camera, but I think there was so much that you were able to offer to us. And of course, I'm sure there's a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions. I'm sure others have a lot of questions too. But I will move on to the next presenter. And if there's some space, because I think we may have some extra time, then I can come back to you, Jonathan. But I really want to thank you for really bringing the perspective of the work that you've been doing in the Dominican Republic to consider so many different elements of streamlining 30 by 30 into the work that you're doing across the ministry, but considering some of the economic implications for streamlining 30 by 30 into different sectors. So lots of great lessons here. And I'm sure for those that have questions, please, I encourage you to put it in the chat. Jonathan, please also include your email in the chat should anyone be interested in wanting to reach out to you to learn more and set up a discussion for later. But thank you so much for that perspective. And we will now move on to another great example of innovation and leadership and championship on conservation in the region. I now invite Ms. Beverly Wade, who is the CEO within the Ministry of Blue Economy and Marine Conservation within the government of Belize, to talk about leveraging the blue economy and blue bonds to unlock long-term financing for 30 by 30. We know that Belize has a long history of innovation in conservation and has well cemented its role as a leader in the space for a number of years. From the landmark blue bond that was finalized in 2021 that unlocked large-scale financing for conservation, to legal commitments of 30% protection of the ocean space by 2026 and the implementation of your Belize Sustainable Ocean Plan. There's so many valuable lessons that we can all learn from Belize's journey. So Beverly, I'd like to start off the discussion by asking you, how has the Blue Bond model supported long-term sustainable financing marine conservation in Belize? And I want you to talk about some of the strategies that really worked for Belize, considering that we have other countries or other implementers on the call that would like to understand what could be applied in their context. And in addition to that, also talk about some of the challenges that you encountered and perhaps how you overcame those challenges. Over to you, Beverly.
Thank you very much. And I first want to thank the organizers of the webinar for inviting us to share a bit of our experience with you. I'm sure that this couple of minutes won't be enough to talk about everything, but as with previous speakers, we're here if you want to reach out for additional information. So I just wanted to, first of all, state that like most states and like the Dominican Republic, Belize is a nature-based economy. Over 70% of our GDP is actually linked to nature. And so we've recognized that. And what the Blue Bonds did was to actually build on decades of leadership in conservation and to create a pathway for our big ambitions when it comes to maintaining the functional integrity of nature that is linked to our economy and to our people. And so I won't go into much of the details of the transactional part of the Blue Bonds. We could discuss that another time or directly. But what the Blue Bonds did for us was that it afforded an opportunity for us to monetize that tradition and history of good stewardship of the environment, one. And secondly, what it allowed us to do is to now create a nexus between safeguarding our natural assets and now addressing something as critical as debt restructuring and financing nationally. I think that was one of the most, in our view, one of the most important achievements that came from the Blue Bonds Agreement, because it created a nexus and a relationship now between natural assets stewardship and the development and financial management and outlooks for us nationally. So there's actually a close relationship formed between the Ministry of Finance and now looking at the management of our blue assets. That is not very common, and it was something that we have benefited from very much so. And so at the time, Belize, like most states, have had great ambitions. We had recently launched our 2021 NDCs, which had clear, measurable, tangible outputs, targets for our blue space. We were already on the path to 30 by 30. I remember there was a 30 by 30 initiative, and Belize was one of those countries that had signed on it originally before it was now formalized into the Global Biodiversity Framework. And so at the time, we had approximately already 15% of our total ocean space under protection in Belize. And so the Blue Bond was looked at as that pathway to get us to that target of the 30 by 30 that we were looking at. And of course, we already had key important governance instruments in place for our blue space. We had our integrated coastal zone management plan and legislation. We had major initiatives when it came to the conservation of key ecosystem, and very much so for sustainable use of the space. Fisheries and tourism for us are key economic drivers in our country. And what the Blue Bonds have done is to allow us to strengthen the governance and to strengthen the systems to continue to maintain livelihoods within that space. And so with the successful negotiation of the Blue Bonds, we were able to, one, as I said, address our debt issue at the time as a country, which is important not only from a national development standpoint, but the fiscal space that the Blue Bond created for Belize allowed government to also continue to allocate and invest into the recurrent costs of key institutions that are really charged with safeguarding and effectively managing the space and these assets. And I think that's something important that people have to recognize, that it has to now feed into something that is sustainable and that is long-term. And so government was able to maintain its recurrent inputs into the management of the space. But what it also did, it allowed us an opportunity to now identify and to commit to long-term financing of $180 million over 20 years for the blue space and for achieving these key targets. Key to these targets was the development of our marine spatial plan. Marine spatial planning wasn't new for Belize. We had a long history of marine spatial planning since our first integrated coastal zone management plan in 2016. But this has now afforded us the opportunity to now develop a marine spatial plan, which is now our Belize Sustainable Ocean Plan that covers our entire ocean space. And so the Blue Bond was very integral to the successful delivery under the Blue Bond were 8 conservation milestones. And one of those milestones, it was the delivery of this marine spatial plan, the Belize Sustainable Ocean Plan, which, by the way, we are on target to deliver this year. And we are on target to deliver, along with that with the Belize Sustainable Ocean Plan, 30% protection of our total ocean space. To date, we have designated, legislated 25% of our total ocean space as protected areas. And so that is one of the key and major deliverables and towards us achieving 30 by 30. But along with that, there were other areas that the Blue Bond has been contributing to. It has been contributing to the conservation of key ecosystem and biodiversity by designating all our mangrove areas on national land in our World Heritage Site as strict mangrove reserves. And that came under our Blue Bonds. It has also allowed us to strengthen the governance system within our blue space. We have been able to strengthen our EIA regulations. Last year, we delivered on the updated and revised integrated coastal zone management plan, along with a new legal framework for integrated coastal zone management and ocean management in Belize. And it has also allowed us to look very carefully at now, how do we ensure that we're looking at sustainable fisheries, to look at the governance, co-management agreements, and at the end of 2029, what the Blue Bonds would have done is to allow us to have the necessary management plans in place and to ensure that we are moving towards effective management of these areas. So basically, what the Blue Bonds have done is to create a pathway for us through long-term financing that was homegrown. It allowed us to tap into non-traditional financing that is not always available because the Blue Bonds is totally private sector funded. And it allowed us to look at our programs, our national priority, to now see how we could use this innovative instrument to now finance these targets that we have aligned very carefully to our national development, to our climate ambitions, and also to our targets for livelihoods, for nature and people at the end of the day. So when looking at our Blue Bonds, we think about, is it scalable? Can we replicate it in the region? Yes. Since the Belize Blue Bonds, we've seen several Blue Bonds that has been negotiated in our region. I think some of our colleagues from the Bahamas will be on this panel too. They can talk about their experience, but we've also seen the Barbados Blue Bonds. But what our Blue Bonds have done is to show that it is highly scalable and it can be replicable to achieving our conservation and our climate outputs by creating a sustainable conservation funding source. Transaction size and overall markets are limited really to countries having a strong commitment to these conservation outcomes. One, the availability and affordability of credit enhancements and debt, and the availability of debt for refinancing. And so it does not necessarily has to be a transaction like Belize that was over 500 million US dollars, or like Ecuador, which I believe was over 1 billion, but it creates a model, a tested model that you can now look at debt in general and to see what is feasible and what is not feasible. Since the negotiation of Belize's blue bonds, we have several partners that have come in. The MDBs are playing an important role in now helping countries to create, negotiate these instruments. They are very important, especially in countries like Belize and other debt-ridden countries where credit enhancement is very important. At the time when we did our blue bond, our debt was really, we were a country that was in default. We were kicking the can down the road. And so credit enhancement is really what was a game changer in the whole deal, to the point where our bonds were oversubscribed when we had put it out to the market. And so we were able to move from junk bonds to high quality bonds. And so the bottom line is that there are more partners available out there for these kinds of transactions. There are also more options in terms of how do we now structure these. There's been toolkits that have now been produced to look at the blue bond. There was a toolkit that was launched by the Nature Conservancy and Belize to help countries to look at this mechanism as an alternative. As the colleague from the Dominican Republic stated earlier, traditionally we are countries that are very much dependent on grants, and this was an opportunity to look at being innovative, being creative, and to also look at an approach that can really work and to be homegrown. And so that in our view was also one of the greatest achievements for us, to have a tested model that we are now seeing being replicated in the region, and very important in bridging that financing gap of meeting 30 by 30.
Perfect.
One last thing I wanted to mention,
sure, go ahead.
I know I'm running out of time, is that one of the things that the blue bonds have allowed Belize to do was it allowed us as a country to rebrand ourselves. We were a serial defaulter. We were not very attractive for strategic partnerships. We were not attractive for concessional financing. And what the blue bonds have done is to allow Belize as a country to gain its credibility as a country that was open to now look at these results-based financing mechanism as one of the solutions for nature and for people and development. And the fact that we are now totally in compliance with our blue bond agreement, both from a financial perspective and from the delivery of these very important conservation targets, further solidifies our leadership in the space, in finding that nexus now between nature and people, which is very important for us as a country. We've been able to leverage the blue bonds in attracting financing, and we are very excited this year because we have been working with WWF, which is a part of a coalition, the Enduring Earth Partnership, who has been promoting PFPs globally, project finance for permanence, as another long-term financial mechanism to move 30 by 30 forward and SDG 14 forward. And so we are looking forward to signing off on our PFP this year and to have a PFP in place that builds on the blue bonds target, and now looking at how we move further into building resiliency in our ecosystem, more effectiveness in our protected areas management, and also ensuring that Belizeans continue to benefit from these functional ecosystems from a livelihood standpoint and our broader economy. So,
Beverly, it's so clear. No, but it's so clear that there's a lot of passion that goes into the work that you do, and I love that you ended with this focus on nature and people. And I think a lot of the times when we go into this work, that sort of ethos is forgotten. And I think it's an important reminder that this is what's underpinning a lot of the work that we do. And I think the Blue Bond is such a great example of how we can bring back the element of connecting nature and people through conservation and through innovation. So thank you so much to Belize for your leadership. Thank you to you, because I know that you play such an instrumental role. And I think by bringing up the PFP towards the end of your presentation allows us for a perfect segue into our next panelist. Our next panelist comes from the government of Panama. We have Deborah Cisneros from the Ministry of Environment. She is the Director of Technical International Corporation. First off, Debbie, great to see you again, and glad that you're a part of this panel. I want to say congratulations to the government of Panama for hosting the first regional center for the Green Climate Fund, supporting Latin America and Caribbean countries. And of course, Panama's incredible advocacy on environmental matters, particularly representing a strong LAC voice internationally and following through with commitment and action with innovative efforts on the ground. So speaking of innovative actions and of financing, we've just heard Beverly speak to implementing the PFP as an addition to all the fantastic work that the Blue Bond was able to unlock for the Belizean government. I know that Panama has started its journey in establishing its first PFP. I would like for you to give us a perspective on that journey by first starting off with why PFP? What is PFP? What is Project Finance for Permanence? And why is this innovative mechanism a mechanism that Panama will pursue? I will say that we are running over time, so I am challenging you to give this within 5 minutes. And I'm encouraging all the panelists to please put your contact details into the chat, so anyone that wants to learn more, if there are any partners that want to work with you, they can directly get in contact with you. So Debbie, I'm handing it over.
Thank you, Sophia. I'm gonna talk in Spanish. So please, if you can turn on the interpretation, it would be very helpful. Voy a tratar de decirles en 5 minutos la importancia del PFP, por qué Panamá escogió esto. Y bueno, estamos hablando de nuestra meta 30 por 30. Quizás algunos de ustedes sabrán que Panamá ya cumplió con esa meta. Nosotros protegemos en estos momentos 32% de nuestro territorio terrestre y 54% de nuestro territorio marino. Sin embargo, nosotros queremos con el PFP garantizar específicamente 3 cosas. 1, financiamiento a largo plazo para nuestro Sistema Nacional de Áreas Protegidas. 2, garantizar, aunque ya hemos cumplido con nuestra meta en este compromiso global, nosotros queremos garantizar que nuestras áreas protegidas tengan representación de todos los ecosistemas más importantes de nuestro país. Por ende, aunque ya cumplimos con la meta, estamos tratando de incrementar el área marina y terrestre, pero estamos enfocándonos en lo marino, para poder lograr que por lo menos el 30% de todos nuestros ecosistemas a nivel nacional estén representados. Y por otro lado, ya teniendo entonces estas áreas protegidas creadas, como mencionó nuestro colega de República Dominicana, no queremos que sea solo en papel, sino que realmente tengan un manejo efectivo, cosa que ya hemos empezado a hacer en los últimos 2 años. Hemos logrado cumplir con muchas de las metas con las que entró esta nueva administración en el 2024, pero el PFP nos va a garantizar que esas metas pues se lleven a largo plazo. Entonces, ¿por qué PFP? ¿Por qué este modelo? Porque este modelo tiene una particularidad muy específica, y es que la gobernanza está representada multisectorialmente. No es solamente el gobierno el que decide qué se va a hacer con esos fondos, no es solamente la sociedad civil, no es solamente los donantes, sino que es un trabajo en conjunto de la academia, del gobierno, del sector privado, de la sociedad civil. Y de esta forma podemos garantizar alinear prioridades y también dar continuidad a la visión de poder conservar nuestras áreas protegidas, una visión con la que ha entrado esta administración muy, muy fuerte. Además de eso, los PFPs también tienen la particularidad de tener un componente de desarrollo comunitario muy fuerte. Es importante, evidentemente, conservar, pero hacer esa conexión con el desarrollo comunitario es un pilar importante dentro de este mecanismo y también es un pilar para Panamá. Entonces, por eso estamos optando por irnos por este mecanismo para poder lograr que nuestras metas pues, se puedan cumplir a largo plazo. Y este mecanismo financiero viene a respaldar nuestra agenda integradora que estamos empujando en esta administración también, y es poder lograr las sinergias entre nuestros diferentes compromisos a nivel internacional. Nosotros como Panamá lanzamos nuestro Pacto de Panamá con la Naturaleza o Nature Pledge, buscando alinear las metas de la Convención de Biodiversidad, de Cambio Climático, de lucha contra la desertificación, pero también los compromisos que tienen que ver específicamente con océanos y para combatir la contaminación por plásticos, aunque estos no tengan, como las otras, una convención per se, sino diferentes esfuerzos. Justo lo que queremos es poder integrar estos diferentes esfuerzos que se han tratado de llevar adelante de forma fragmentada. Entonces, bajo el marco de este gran programa que nosotros llamamos nuestro Nature Pledge, este documento que buscamos integrar todos nuestros compromisos, el PFP, que nosotros le estamos poniendo nuestro nombre como Fondo Panamá Natural, es una pieza clave para garantizar ese financiamiento a largo plazo. De nuestras 30 metas que tiene el Pledge, 10 tienen que ver con conservación de la biodiversidad y protección de nuestras áreas protegidas, es decir, un tercio de estos va a estar cubierto con el PFP, con el Fondo Panamá Natural, que es el nombre que le estamos dando. Y bueno, nuestra visión es esa, que lo que nosotros estamos empezando a hacer en este momento, a pesar de que cambien las administraciones, a pesar de que cambien las prioridades, no solamente del Ministerio de Ambiente, sino del Gobierno Nacional, esto que se está sembrando pueda continuar, porque va a depender no solamente de la decisión de quien esté a cargo en el gobierno, sino también de cuáles son las prioridades, en este caso de nuestro sector privado, de nuestra sociedad civil, de la parte científica, de los donantes, que son un componente muy importante para poder establecer este fondo.
Thank you so much, Debbie. First, for meeting that challenge. I think there's so much that Panama is doing, and 5 minutes is just not enough time for you to be able to share that perspective. But I think it's very interesting that the PFP is going to try to underpin, as you said, this sort of nexus between all these important MEAs that you are capturing within your Nature Pledge in Panama. And I think that's a very interesting way to look at it. And it obviously, with a lot of the commitments and obligations, there's so much bureaucracy that tends to be created by the conventions that putting them under this overarching vision makes a lot of sense. And of course, bringing in a financing mechanism that is able to deliver across all of those, I think it's quite strategic. So congratulations to Panama. Thank you so much for joining us on the panel. And then we're now going to sort of leave the government perspective and bring it to a non-governmental perspective by getting some ideas from our very last panelist. I'm very happy to introduce Natalia Rango Velez, who is the Executive Director of Fundo Acción in Colombia. Natalia, Fundo Acción sits at the cornerstone of marine and coastal conservation through its innovative community-led financing and blue carbon initiatives, including supporting large-scale conservation efforts like Herencia Colombia Initiative, supported through PFP and the coral restoration within the seaflower biosphere hemisphere. There's so many lessons to learn from these innovative efforts. Can you speak to how you bridge the gap between the work of a conservation trust fund and the national conservation and biodiversity management priorities of government? And if you can speak to this "we are what we are" promise and ethos that the conservation trust funds sort of embody, I think that would be really helpful for the audience. And again, I'm putting the challenge to you as I put to Debbie, that we have very limited time. So we have about 4 to 5 minutes for you to share your perspective. So over to you, Natalia, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Con mucho gusto, gracias a ustedes por invitarme, Sofía. Antes de contestar tu pregunta, una pequeña aclaración. El programa Herencia Colombia es operado por Fondo Patrimonio Natural, no Fondo Acción. Es un programa exitoso y que tiene una importancia muy significativa en la conservación de áreas protegidas en Colombia, pero no quiero quedarme con un crédito que no le corresponde a Fondo Acción. Ahora bien, los fondos ambientales en general, como es el Fondo Acción, Fondo Patrimonio o el CBF y sus miembros fondos, fueron creados para facilitar las inversiones efectivas y oportunas en transformación y en acciones positivas para la conservación de la biodiversidad y las comunidades, porque en las realidades donde operan los fondos ambientales, aunque su misión es de promoción de la conservación, esto no se puede lograr si no se hace simultáneamente con una mirada práctica y muy operativa sobre el mejoramiento de las condiciones de vida de las poblaciones asociadas a los centros de conservación de biodiversidad, sean estos áreas protegidas o no. Y en ese sentido somos una herramienta para hacer fluir la financiación, y así estaba concebido en su descripción desde el Convenio de Diversidad Biológica en el 92, que empezó a promover instrumentos como los canjes de deuda por naturaleza, que el Fondo Acción Administrados, pero asimismo hay otros fondos en América Latina y otros continentes. Entonces, esta naturaleza de ser una entidad facilitadora que convoca distintos elementos de la sociedad, dinero público con acciones lideradas por el Estado, pero también lideradas por la sociedad civil en los territorios, con menos costos y mejores tiempos de acción, nos dan una posición muy estratégica para contribuir a cerrar la brecha. Siempre tendremos una brecha financiera porque, como ya lo mostraron tal vez Karen con mucho detalle respecto a la brecha anual para administrar y manejar efectivamente las áreas protegidas, siempre tendremos una brecha financiera, pero no es el único problema que tiene la conservación efectiva, y es hacer llegar los recursos oportunamente a las acciones oportunas y con la menor burocracia y costos administrativos asociados. Entonces, en ese sentido, los fondos ambientales en general están muy bien posicionados. Ahora, para poder hacer ese trabajo, es muy importante trabajar de la mano de los gobiernos. Es lo que quiere decir que las agendas y las metas de los fondos ambientales son aquellas que fijan los gobiernos en sus planes de biodiversidad, en sus planes de acción climática, en los instrumentos de política. Nosotros misionalmente estamos atados a las prioridades del Estado. No somos una ONG que tiene sus propias metas y misiones particulares, sino que debemos atender la prioridad descrita por los estados. Y en ese sentido también podemos hacer una tarea mucho más eficiente, dado que no hay que atender una misión propia y la misión del Estado y de las políticas públicas es la misión de los fondos ambientales. Ahora bien, los gobiernos son muy importantes para ayudarnos a hacer esa tarea. Son ellos en la mano del Estado nacional o el Estado subnacional, los que pueden hacer que los recursos fluyan a través de los fondos ambientales, privilegiando a los fondos ambientales nacionales por encima de instituciones internacionales o multipaís o de esquemas, digamos, más macro, que tienen unos tiempos de digamos, de entrega de recursos mucho más asociados a estructuras complejas y unos costos también mayores asociados a ese tipo de estructuras. Los fondos ambientales podemos hacerlo a través de ser instituciones locales diseñadas para operar para otros. Y, por ejemplo, si los estados escogen a los fondos ambientales para ejecutar recursos de cooperación bilateral o multilateral, ese proceso fortalece la gestión de los fondos mismos a los fondos mismos, pero además permite llevar esos recursos con mayor agilidad y mayor eficiencia a terreno. Entonces, creo que en ese sentido los fondos ambientales tienen un papel muy importante que jugar, pero no lo pueden hacer sin un trabajo muy cercano con los gobiernos en atención a las políticas públicas.
Thank you so much, Natalia. And I think that makes a lot of sense to me. And I'd like to see a lot of these strategies, being taken up by some of the new conservation trust funds that are coming on board in the Caribbean. So for those of you that are working with trust funds that's on the call, please, you can connect with Natalia. I'll encourage Natalia to please place your contact information in the website of Fundo Acción in the chat. And you can connect with Natalia with any of the questions that you have. Because we're running quite behind on the schedule, we're going to jump right into our closing session. I'd first like to thank all the panelists for joining us today and also sharing your experience from the heart. I think it's the sort of discussion that we need to support in the region when we look to advancing solutions, particularly advancing solutions that require all levels of engagement from the top all the way through the bottom. And so with that in mind, I will then transition over to our closing remarks. Closing remarks will be provided by Ambassador Weber. He is a special envoy for climate change, environment, oceans, and blue economy within the government of Jamaica. I wish you were working with Grenada. He always welcome that, Professor. But Professor also has a really fantastic role supporting Jamaica's leadership within the high-level panel for the sustainable ocean economy. And of course, given his wealth of experience within the region, we are quite excited and honored to have the professor and ambassador closing our webinar today. So handing it over to you, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Sonny, and good afternoon to you, colleagues all. It's extremely pleasing to see a webinar of this type being organized, and I want to give congratulations to the Ocean Coordination Mechanism and CBF for having brought us together in this thought process, because it is timely in terms of what's happening in the world and where we are in our annual cycle, but it's also important in terms of reaching the views. And if I were to wrap up and talk about what I've just heard, for me, it is pivotal that we talk about community-led conservation initiatives, that we're able to link the public and private partnership linkages, recognizing that it's transboundary because we've had 3, 4, 5 different countries with their perspectives as to how they've been able to manage and where they've gotten to with their 30 by 30. But it also talks about integrated land use and integrated sea use, since we're trying to put both together to get to that 30 by 30. Jamaica is still working on its plan. We're about 25% when it comes to oceans and about 17% when it comes to land. So we still have some work to do. And I've learned a lot from what you have said. Listening to Deborah, Beverly, Natalie, there's a lot that we can learn from each other. And I think that's a key part of the education and awareness campaign, which is pivotal. In order for us to make progress, we must look at the lessons that have been learned. We must look at the challenges that exist. We must recognize the regional voice for what it is and use the platforms such as the OCM, such as the CBF, to try and leverage what we have and what we know works. Yes, we have opportunities with blue bonds, with debt for nature swaps, with debt for climate swaps, but how do we make the best use of them so that we can then use in our own area? My keywords would be, take it a step at a time. You can't get to 30 by 30 right now. You need to do it. You have 3 or 4 years. Let's go at 5 protected areas per year. Let's decide how many different partners we can get on board. Let's get commitments so that governments and non-governmental organizations get together on what the goals are. Just as have been said in terms of where the biodiversity and conservation structure takes us. It's important that we look for constructive finance mechanisms that make a difference, that allow us to apply in all our areas. But having found them, we need to share them with each other so that we get that transboundary setting. Key to all of this is ensuring that we communicate. And this webinar is one of a number which we'll hear of. And the webinars are a key way for us to hear what others are doing, to share what we're doing, so that we all can benefit. You may not be able to do it all, not all at the same time, but it's important that you get the commitment to do it. And I feel our spirits have been lifted, our knowledge has been increased, and our desire and our passion is so strong. Looking forward to working with you all as we close out on More for the Oceans, Actions in Blue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Weber, for closing off us with great inspiring remarks. I think we have about 1 minute, so I'll hand over to the OCM Secretariat to leave us with some coordination and next steps. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you so much, ambassadors. I'll be a bit orthodox in the order of my thanks by first thanking the webinar participants, especially country representatives. Your interest in this work is reflective of a rising tide of momentum for the preservation of our invaluable blue or shared ocean. I would like to thank the presenters and our speakers for their time and valuable inputs. By learning what others are doing in the region successfully, we can better understand the path on the map our countries and organizations would like to chart. Thank you, Megan Cuddy from the Our Ocean Secretariat, Karen McDonald-Yale, CEO of Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, Helena Jeffrey Brown, Program Director at the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, Mr. Jonathan DeLance, Ms. Beverly Whale, Natalia Arango Velez, Deborah Cisneros, and of course, Ambassador Weber, who just gave us some very passionate closing remarks. I'd like to thank Ambassador Swanee from the Government of Grenada for her excellent moderation. And importantly, I would also like to thank the generous funding provided by the Global Environment Facility and the United Nations Development Program, which makes the Ocean Coordination Mechanism possible. I would like to thank the wider Caribbean Ocean Coordination Mechanism Secretariat team here in Cartagena, Colombia, where we're based, who worked exceptionally hard, Angelica, Jesus, Mariana, and of course, our director, Mr. Patrick Devils. Thank you. I would also like to thank Mr. Fabian Keane, my colleague at CBF, who we worked with to co-organize this webinar. And to our translators who make cross-language collaborations possible, thank you very much. This webinar is not destination or stopping point. It's a springboard to the next actions we will take. By coordinating our actions, we make better use of limited resources and reduce the risk of fragmentation of efforts, which of course Mr. Devil articulated as one of the most significant threats to ocean governance in the region. Ultimately, we seek more sustainable outcomes for our marine spaces, but this requires resources. As Karen said in our presentation, we know that SDG 14 has been one of the most underfunded SDGs, and the financing gap was also highlighted by multiple presenters today. With your presence and subsequent action, we would like to take advantage of the following truth. More voices mean more resources. Actually, I would like to correct that. More coordinated voices mean more resources and more impact, which is ultimately what we're driving for. We invite you to participate in the subsequent webinars of this series. On April 14, we have Essential Tools for Sustainable Ocean Planning and Management, the SOPs. On April 21st, we have Accounting for People, Nature and the Economy, the Ocean Accounting Framework. And on April 28th, we have Rising Political Ambition for Ocean Climate Action, which focuses on blue nationally determined contributions. We're also potentially considering having a webinar on underwater ocean noise. You'll hear about that later on if it is confirmed. The next part is particularly important. If your country would like to join Action in Blue, please contact the Caribbean Biodiversity Fund to discuss next steps. We'll be having a Caribbean-led side event at our Oceans Conference, which we have co-organized with the Government of Grenada, Government of Jamaica, which we believe will be an excellent opportunity for countries to demonstrate on the global scale their commitment to action. You heard from Megan from the Our Ocean Secretariat about the billions mobilized by this conference. Let's make sure that some of those dollars flow to our region for the initiatives we have highlighted throughout this webinar series and beyond. So thank you again for your participation. Look out for the subsequent series, and let's make sure that we have a united presence at the Our Oceans Conference and beyond. Thank you very much. For those of you still here, we will be posting the recording of the webinar on our webpage dedicated to the series of webinars. You can see the QR code in the bottom right-hand corner. If you scan that QR code, it will take you to the webpage. But please, of course, in the chat box, you would have seen more information about the Ocean Coordination Mechanism and the Pro-Caribe Plus project which supports it. Please check out our website for more information and reach out to us if you'd like to collaborate. Thank you again, and have a great afternoon or evening wherever you are. Ciao.